Ahoy hoy, and welcome to episode 12 of the Elephant Room podcast. I think we're on. It's quite the feat, isn't it?
Yeah. 12 question mark episode.
Yeah, I think it's 12. How are the lads?
Good now, yourself?
Grand, just getting over the old Shrove Tuesday, the Hash Wednesday, and now into the tough part of Lent.
Did you have any pancakes, Ian?
I did indeed, yeah.
What do you put on your
It's
pancakes?
sweet or savoury, yeah.
Sweet all the way. We would put on some Nutella, maybe some jam.
Mm.
I know Ailva goes for the lemon and sugar. I don't know. I wouldn't be that type.
Yeah,
Ailva
that's
kind of
a bit
varied it up this time. She varied it up with like Kinder Bueno, lads. Oh my god.
Oh,
Yeah.
Just the two fingers just lobbed in.
Yeah. No, but listen to this. Actually, the Kinder Bueno kind of melted on top, but then inside. So, if you imagine like rolling the pancake into like a little roll or sausage, and on the inside, the Kinder bars, the little thin little Kinder bars,
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
melted inside, like decadence, sheer decadence. That's
The French have crepes, but I've never heard of a pancake being described so like erotically as you just did there.
like a sausage.
That was something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is a happy hippo just a half Kinder Bueno bar, basically, in the shape of a hippo?
Yeah, I think so. I've never tried them.
You never tried
I
what?
think
You never tried a
No.
happy hippo?
neither have I.
What?
I've seen them. I know what you're talking about.
Are you both really unhappy people?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. So just to make sure that we're actually providing a service here to the world, so I have two top fives this week. We got to compete with Dermot and Dave here, lads. We're faltering. The first top five is the global top 5 artists this month. So the 5 most streamed. Fuck all different since the last time I brought it to you. It's just shuffled around a bit. Number 1 is The Weeknd, once again spelt wrong, missing an E. Number 2 is Justine Bieber. Number 3 is Dua Lipa. Number 4 is Ariana Grande. And number 5 is Wexford man Edward Sheeran. I'd like to have some sort of enthusiasm about that, but I don't. The top 5 global songs then this month. This is basically the top 5 songs on Earth that everyone is talking about. I'll give you how many streams they have as well. So number 1 is Olivia Rodrigo, Driver's License. Have you heard of this?
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's absolutely forgettable. That has 388 million streams.
Jeez.
Where have you been living, lads?
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is, once again, The Weeknd with Save Your Tears, which has 263 million. If you haven't heard that, lads, don't. Number 3 in the global charts is, wait for it, The Weeknd with Blinding Lights, which I think has been in the charts for like a year or something. That has 1,974,000,000 streams just on Spotify.
Somebody,
My God.
His mom has it on repeat.
You know that song, yeah?
I think I know.
That's the TikTok song, you know.
Oh yeah. I know that one.
Number 4, we're getting into scary territory here. Bad Bunny, the Kitty,
Okay.
has 609 million views.
You just said words that none of it made sense.
Yeah, I've just written down letters. And as well, I didn't even this is how lazy I was. I didn't even write down all these have featuring different people and stuff like that as well. I didn't bother cover that.
As if that's going to help.
Number 5 in the top global songs right now is Mike Towers with Bandido, which has 142 million streams on Spotify. So I listened to these songs before I wrote them down. So number 4 and 5, Bad Bunny and Mike Towers, they're in Spanish. Second most spoken language on it. Well, I don't know. I suppose not including that really big one, Mandarin, that we're not allowed here. But yeah, I suppose the Western market, Spanish. So at least there's a bit of a mix going on in there.
Frank, we're just old fogies that don't know what we're talking about.
I
But
don't
look,
know anymore. There's no such thing as being an old fogey with the internet age. I don't think anyone knows what's going on. Everyone who's streaming these songs, you think they know what's going on? Like, do you think the 1,974,000,000 streams that The Weeknd has got? Do you remember that quote from Superhands? It's like, you don't want to trust people. People like Coldplay and voted in the Nazis. So,
uh,
Paul O'Gorman here of CMI Limited. Fed up or embarrassed about your pathetic bedroom, cubbyhole, or corner of your kitchen table for those online meetings, important interviews, or general chatting or browsing with friends online? Then fear not, we've got a solution for you. For only €20.99 a month, you can subscribe to the CMI Personal Online Surroundings Transformation Model. With this, you get access up to 10 different high-definition background imagery per month that you can download and transform your sordid little hole into a high-end apartment. Skiing on the Alps or down by the Seine in France. Perhaps you'd like to visit the Great Wall of China and have your meeting there. Endless possibilities. Your friends will like you. Your colleagues will like you. You'll get that successful job. CMI Limited. Transforming business, personal, online presence.
I was thinking, so last week, or the last episode, we interviewed Moon Palace. And in the past, we had J.W. Francis on the show. And we had our friend Gene on the show. All of which are fantastic musicians. But all of which also have day jobs. Music is not their sole provider. And got me thinking about, does that matter? Because it seems now that everybody who is in music is not a full-time musician. Because I would have presumed that Moon Palace and J.W. Francis, two the musicians that we didn't know, I would have presumed that they were full-time musicians. Obviously, their online personas are just them playing music. It's them recording, it's them playing live, it's them in their bedrooms. They rarely go, had a shit day in the office today. So it has a lot to do, I think, with avatars, which I think has been a thing for a while. The persona of a band in the world of reality TV and all this sort of stuff, because, well, reality TV isn't actually reality, it's scripted reality, and it's realistically not the bare bones reality, because reality is quite boring a lot of the time. We all experience reality on a day-to-day basis. We want the mystique. We want someone else to be living the life that we want to live. So that's why we follow these influencers and we follow these musicians, in the hope that they are living the dream, basically. So it just got me kind of thinking about the legitimacy of artists that we listen to and how much does that actually matter. As I was saying, when I found out that someone like J.W. Francis had a job, it kind of made me not sad, but it was kind of like, I wanted you to be this kind of wandering kind of minstrel around New York. It kind of ruined the dream a bit, kind of what I wanted them to be. And I always think the prime example of that is someone like C6 Steve, who, when I suppose he came around in 2005, 2006, and he was marketed as this guy who was from a different time. He wore his dungarees and was a down-home southern guy who played a beaten-up guitar that had 3 strings on it. And he just seemed like a different era, It seemed like a guy who'd never been to the city, didn't know what the internet was, didn't have a cell phone, all this sort of stuff. And he played this old-fashioned music. And he seemed so legit. That was the allure of him, was how old school he was. And you gravitate towards that because you go, this is brilliant. I'm so used to seeing Lady Gaga and Kylie Minogue and all these Kardashian type celebrities, that this is great. This is a man who's untainted from this part of the world where it's just all he cares about is music, and that's the great thing about him. But then, without wanting to expose him or trying to dig deep or anything like that, I found out that he, during the early 90s, he worked for Geffen. He ran a studio and used to find artists. He was a scout, and he very much so had the city job and lived in Seattle, and I think he was actually from Washington somewhere. And the whole thing was just kind of like a gimmick, just to sell himself. Obviously he played blues music and was really into it and stuff, but it was kind of like a gimmick just to because people would want that. The music still existed and the character of C6 Steve still existed, but the legitimacy of it kind of spoiled it a bit, knowing that he wasn't really this kind of like, mountain man from the wilderness who just like stumbled into a studio and recorded a few songs and went, we're going to bring it to the big time, boy. That he was actually, he was well in tune with it and stuff like that. So I think now in the internet age, how much does the legitimacy matter? Because if you watch a movie, are you disappointed when you find out that Leonardo DiCaprio isn't the Wolf of Wall Street, that he's actually just playing a character? Musicians should be allowed to act as well. I think we often look, because a lot of genres, the origin of a lot of genres is from the areas they come from. With this, you get into like cultural appropriation and different things like that with like rap music, and you get into like C6 Steve, that was music that actually was played by run-of-the-mill working class blue collar country people, and then this like city boy comes along and just sells snow to the Eskimos sort of thing, But yeah, legitimacy, it's something that I have thought about a lot, especially with like accents and music and stuff. You find it in Ireland a lot, people sing out like thick inner city Dublin accents, and then you find out that they're actually like drama school students and stuff. Is that just them playing a character, or can you go, they're charlatans just once again selling snow to the Eskimos sort of thing?
As far as like for me, as far as like rap music goes, you touched on it there. It's a genre of music where the artist can come under a lot of scrutiny. Your legitimacy will be tested at every turn in your career. Like if you say anything in rap or in hip hop in your lyrics, you're gonna come under fire if there isn't truth behind it. So if you say you're from the streets and you sold drugs to get where you are today, and it turns out none of that is true, your music isn't really going to get listened to because you're going to get shouted down, because you're being fake, essentially. Like one thing that isn't really a big secret at all in rap music is, if we look at like Eazy-E from NWA, is that it's well known he didn't write any of his own lyrics. Like it was Dr. Dre and Ice Cube and MC Ren. It was the other rappers, the lyricists of the group that wrote his verses for him. And in some instances, even explained the delivery of the rhymes to him and how to say it, As I said, it wasn't a secret. Now, people accepted it. At the time, people knew that, and they accepted it because everything that they wrote for him was true to his character, true to his life, true to his story. And then that coupled with his voice and his delivery of those lines in the song, you knew it was coming from a real place. So he gave the words legitimacy. I don't think someone else would get away with it, but it's an interesting point to make. Like if someone else came out and sold themselves as gangster rap, but didn't have the real life experiences that they had, they'd be chewed up and spit out by the media, their peers, the audience that they're trying to sell themselves to, and ultimately they wouldn't get listened to.
I always have this memory of like when I heard the Rubber Bandits for the first time, it was so obviously a parody to me, and I kind of thought, like, I grew up seeing like kind of like even just among friends, you kind of like impersonate like the boyos from your area, the kind of like housing estate sort of lads, wherever you were from, you'd always kind of like impersonate those things. It was always quite funny because they are kind of the funniest people from the working class. People are always the funniest people from whatever area of the world they're from. But as soon as I heard the Rubber Bandits, I thought they're lower middle class creative people, because if they were really their characters, they wouldn't be doing music probably. They'd be busy smoking hash and drinking cans like what they're on about. But these are just lads who observed it and then just went, this is a great character. So this is, I think it comes into comedy a lot with music anyway, because I have this lasting memory of an older guy I was working with once, and he was like, have you heard them Rubber Bandits lads? And I was like, yeah, they're brilliant. And he was like, do you reckon they're as rough as they go on that they are? And in my head I was like, no, Jesus, do people actually think that they're serious? And then it struck me that I was like, geez, a lot of people actually do think that that's what they're like in real life. And then the same thing goes for Versatile. Like Versatile, the people who show up at like Versatile gigs are people who actually hang on their words and don't see that it's kind of a joke. And yeah, you can argue now that like some of their stuff can border on offensive and racist and misogyny and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it is a joke. And that's kind of what I'm saying. It blurs the line between what is a joke and what is real. You know, those videos now on YouTube where it'll be like a person being really stupid, or, you know, someone being crap at rapping or something like that. And you go, is he for real? He can't be real. Like, no one's that bad. What was he thinking? Film himself. Oh, and it's made look really real. And you go, is he legit? Like, is he legitimately taking himself seriously? And then you find out that he's an actor, and you see an interview with the real guy, and you go, yeah, I just thought it would be funny if I put up like a fake audition tape of me, being an awkward rapper, and it's not actually real. So it's funny with music, because it, as I'm saying, with acting, it's allowed. You don't go to a movie, you don't go and watch a movie and go, this is a real thing. It's entertainment, it's fiction. But with music, I think, as I was saying, because I think it's the essence of all genres comes from reality. And people have this attachment to the realism of it. People want their rappers to be gangster rappers. They want their blues musicians to actually be, down and out bluesmen. They want their southern rock to be southern rockers. They want their folk musicians to be actual working class folk people. They want their trad musicians to be from the back hole of Clare. They don't want to hear some D4 fella singing Sean-O's songs. They want the authenticity of it.
I'm picturing you finding about C6 Steve as like Marge Simpson on the bus finding out the monkeys don't play their instruments.
No, it wasn't even like that, because I wasn't even into C6 Steve. It was just, he was always one of those examples of like, oh, he's just this old guy who rolled down off the hill and started playing his 4-string guitar because that's all he knows. But then when I found out that it was like this premeditated character, basically, I was like, well, they shouldn't be selling it like that. But then you go, well, to make it an interesting story, they do have to sell it. There needs to be a bit of mystique and stuff like that. And it's almost our horrible cynicism finding it out that ruined it for ourselves.
I think there is a case to be said for the initial kind of setting up of these things with artists and bands and having these kind of novelty personas, as an act or whatever. Like, I think there is a little bit of innocence at first, that like this is, it's a bit of crack, like we put on this kind of, persona and, we have a laugh. I think it's when the likes of the industry, or, like back in the day, the A&R man or whatever picks up on it and said, actually, this can be made into a brand, this can be molded, this can be fed back to people as an actual thing that people start to relate to culturally and that, But I came across an absolutely fantastic piece in there's this Australian study, persona studies, peer-reviewed academic journal. But there's these two guys, Fairchild and Marshall. They're like absolute up there in Australia in terms of cultural studies. And they did this seminal paper on music persona. And I just thought one of the quotes in particular really stood out in terms of the whole persona and brand, and how it's sold back to people. And it's just music persona, when considered in branding terms, is a strategic reformation of music for economic exchange as cultural and emotional engagement are translated and retranslated into commercial value. So the way I see that is, you have your band or your act originally just having their gimmick, their thing, on a Saturday night down in the club for a bit of crack. It's only when I think they're discovered and, it's fed back to them here. Listen, you have a good thing going here. This whole novelty thing, your persona, we can make this into a brand and sell it to people. Then it becomes a bit more of a, legitimacy argument, I think,
Yeah, like that's what I was going to say with like the Monkees are very early, like one of the first examples of that, because the Beatles were 4 lads from Liverpool. And that, like, the Beatles are like basically the first example of a commercial pop band, that they were 4 lads from Liverpool, and people seem to like that. Kind of Brian Epstein made them wear the suits, but he couldn't make them change how they spoke and acted. And people loved that it was the 3 lads, because like the BBC didn't have regional accents on the BBC before that, so they really were this kind of like, national exposure of local wit and stuff like that, and the world loved it. and then people relate to it. And this music, I've always said, moves in waves. It moves in waves of escapism to relatability. Like the late 60s went really into escapism because it was drugs and it was psychedelia and trying to make everything seem like it came from a different planet, and the sounds and everything like that. And then that turned into prog. I suppose maybe like the early blues stuff of Zeppelin and stuff brought it back a bit, and like Let It Be and everything like that, trying to get a bit back to roots. But I think predominantly prog took it further away from the world because technology
Definitely.
advanced and all this sort of stuff. And then 1976, 77, bang, punk comes in. You're brought back to, I can't sound like Yes in my bedroom, but I can play fucking 3 chords on one string, or I can play 3 notes on one string, which means I can be a punk and fuck the industry and fuck everything and stuff like that. But then the 80s comes along and that turns into new wave and everything gets mad and electronic and stuff like that. Hardcore is always happening underneath the surface, but then grunge brings that. What was the quote from Eddie Vedder? It was like, people related to the guy who looked like the fella who pumped gas, because it was like Kurt Cobain came along and he was being blatantly honest and blatantly real, and he looked like the fella who worked down the petrol station. And it was like, that could be me. This is great. I can't be Michael Jackson, but I can be this lad. I can't be Michael Jackson singing about this fucking nonsense world peace or whatever, this unattainable thing that little old me can do. But I can sing about my feelings and wear a flannel shirt. That is basically me already. That's great. And then that got carried away with new metal and everything got fucking complicated and out of reach again. And then the garage rock thing comes back and everything's a bit more relatable. And then the same thing would happen with hipsterism, and then someone like Mac DeMarco comes along. That kind of, once again, relatableness of no bullshit, not lying about anything. Yeah, I think the internet now is just a big mishmash of everything. But as you just said there, it comes along with lots of people, like it happened in the 90s with Oasis, Nirvana, the Beatles, Mac DeMarco, this really relatableness of people that look and sound authentic and don't give a shit. But then the flip side of that is someone like Ed Sheeran. He's not a pop star. He doesn't look like, or Lewis Capaldi. They don't look like pop stars because that's unattainable. Or anyone that's been on like X Factor and Britain's Got Talent and stuff. It's just a lad from Tesco. It's just a fella from down the street there, busking on the street. Yeah, I like him. But the truth is that someone like Ed Sheeran went through all these like youth talent academies and stuff like that, and he isn't the lad down the street. He's very much so in the entertainment industry. Once again, selling snow to the Eskimos.
But that's it. Like, he's packaged up,
Yeah.
Well, I suppose like when you're looking at legitimacy, I suppose what we're touching on here is like your intent. Whether are you intending to sell yourself as something that you're not, or are you just yourself and that's just how you come across? Like, I suppose that's the kind of difference.
But this is the beauty of it then, because that gets onto the other side of things, like taking things at face value, because as I'm saying, you can do it in movies and you can do it in books. We pick up a book and you're not blown away that this thing isn't real. You don't pick up Lord of the Rings and go, wow. You go, well, this is obviously fiction.
Did you know this happened?
Yeah. You don't read it as history. So when you see a band like the White Stripes or the Hives, who are so obviously not real, but everyone really, really wanted or the Rubber Bandits, everyone really wants to find out the truth behind them, even though it would ruin it.
Absolutely.
The Mystique or the Knife, a band like the Knife or something like that, like these bands that you don't really know anything about. And they like, when they get interviewed, they lie, their interview is an extension of their character and their mystique and stuff like that. And they're great. But people really want it because that was the thing. Like the White Stripes is a great example in that, like, they sold themselves as, they dressed in their color coordination. They recorded music in like a 1950s style on tape. And in the interviews, they said they were brother and sister. And, they seemed like something from a different era or just a different planet. And then everyone went and researched them and found out the truth that they were actually dating each other and they were actually this and they're actually from Detroit and they're actually this and they're actually that. And I was like, oh, it's not okay. I'm going to continue to believe that they're brother and sister.
Yeah.
I don't care. Because imagine they just came out wearing fucking bootcut jeans and a chain and looked like Detroit people from 2000, early 2000s, and recorded on early versions of Pro Tools, and it would have been so shit.
Yeah.
No one would have they still would have been popular to an extent if they were selling themselves in the same way. But once again, that was grunge mania had reached such a point that he was Jack White was let's go back to the mystique of things.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
And let's go back to the bands where let's go back to Kraftwerk, or let's go back to the Kinks, or let's go back to not knowing our musicians anymore and being these characters. Let's go back to being the Monkees. It comes and goes. And I think now we're spoiled for choice, and that we have a bit of everything in that. But it's definitely harder, I think, to sell yourself being mysterious, because social media makes that very difficult. Because to stay relevant on social media, you have to take a picture of your breakfast and what you do and stuff like that.
I think it's something to do with the music video era is over as well. People don't. When we were discovering music, you'd be watching TV and a song would come on, and you go, "Oh, what's this?" Just from you talking about it there of the mystique, I was just thinking about the Gorillaz.
Yeah,
they were just a cartoon, but nobody knew who they were, and it took me ages to figure out that that's Damon Albarn from Blur. It was again another thing of, I love this because I've no idea who these people are, what they're doing, and it's a cartoon. And when you go to the gigs, it's a screen and the cartoons are being played in front of you,
Or a band like Slipknot.
Yeah, exactly.
Who all wore masks, and it was what the heck? And the fun of it was that it was escapism. It was these lads are from a different planet. It's the same reason that you read Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's something that I thought of when I was a kid. Was when I was small, listening to music, I thought musicians were from another planet, and that it was just they couldn't be. How are they doing that? How are they, making that music and singing these songs? And they couldn't be from where we're from. They're not from this plane of existence.
Once again, that's what I was saying about going in waves, because you listen to a band like Slipknot or the Hives or the White Stripes, and it's escapism, because you're sitting in some place in Ireland, and that's more fun than reality. It's more fun to escape into whatever world this band is creating. But then again, it's also great to hear a band like the Undertones, the Sex Pistols, or someone really relatable, because then you go, oh, there's hope for me yet. Because if those guys can make it, then famous people do come out of horrible little villages in rainy Ireland. So yeah, as I said, it comes and goes in waves of escapism and relatableness.
Yeah, I think that just said the waves. I think exactly the point to which Jack White said, how he basically formed the White Stripes. It was a reactionary thing, to this era, in the late 90s, early 2000s, where it was all singles, big massive productions, sold to pop bands and that, so it was really reactionary. But what I find very interesting with the White Stripes, I'm sure you'd agree on this, is that they had their kind of novelty thing, they had their mystique, and a lot of it was reactionary in terms of how they recorded and their style and all that. But in all that, in themselves, and then when they were signed to the bigger record label V2, they kind of became their own brand, and their own package, and they were sold then to the rest, and they were garnering all this attention that they weren't quite comfortable with themselves, but yet they went along and perpetuated myth. So it's an interesting one,
Well, that's back to my kind of point of your intent. If you're intending to go, right, I'm going to make money off of this type of struggle or story, and I'm going to sell it back because I want to make money, then your intent is wrong, and then your legitimacy is wrong. It's not good.
Yeah, that's where you get into bands like Fontaine's DC and stuff. They talk as if they're inner city dubs with these working class problems and stuff. And the argument there is that a lot of poets like James Joyce and different people like that, who they constantly drill that they're saying that they're fans of. James Joyce wasn't working class or anything like that, but he was a great voice for the working class. Same with Bob Dylan. And that's kind of the creativity side of things. If you're not being a charlatan, I suppose you're just being giving those people a voice, using your platform to give them a voice. I immediately would listen to a band like Fontaines DC and go, well, they're obviously drama students taking on the voice of the working class to get their point across, and possibly give the working class a voice. But then the people who listen to him go, oh yeah, they're real inner city dubs, aren't they? They're like, what's why are you taking this at such face value? Like, so,
Yeah.
but once again, how much does that matter? How much does your legitimacy matter? That is the big question.
I don't think we've answered it.
I don't think you can. It's just an interesting thought, because no matter what side of the argument you fall on, something you listen to will make you a hypocrite.
Oh, completely.
Because if you go,
sure, look at even obviously they were my favorite band, like Led Zeppelin. Look at the prime example there, Led Zeppelin 1. It's all reworkings of black music, like, you know what I mean? Like it's complete cultural appropriation, and it was sold back to the Americans. They fucking hit America first over the UK and Europe.
Yeah,
and they went down a storm in America. You did have that small cohort, well, unfortunately small, like, of the black musicians actually complaining at the time. And they were just fucking silenced. They were brushed to the side. And it wasn't until decades later that they got their fucking day in court, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, for a long time, it was hard for me to admit that Led Zeppelin did that, but they did. They did.
Once again, because they grew up in an era where they could afford to buy all these records by black Southern musicians, and that's what they were interested in. And if you're insanely obsessed with something, then that's obviously the music you're going to make. So as I'm saying, if you're sitting in like your village in Ireland somewhere and all you listen to is gangster rap, you can't sit back and go, well, this is all I care about. It's all that inspires me. And I've got the world telling me that I can't sit back and rap about my troubles and strifes in my village in Ireland. It's wrong. What am I supposed to do? Just sit around singing Shannon songs because that's all that I'm culturally allowed to sing about?
It's very true, but one thing that is springing to mind for me is like the invention of ska music and how that came about in England. It's from Jamaican families being moved over there, and they're living in the same tenement buildings and flats that the white lower class were living in. And there's these guys who are skinheads living next door to Jamaicans, and they're listening to reggae music, and they brought those strumming patterns in with this 3-chord kind of punk sound, and now you have ska music. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful mix of two cultures born out of, they're both on the same level of poverty that they were on with each other, So that's something that, is a good example of it.
We spoke about it before, the global chain of globalization of stuff like being sold all over the world and being available everywhere, especially now with the internet where everything is absolutely everywhere. As I've said before, you can study Mongolian throat singing anywhere. You don't have to be from Mongolia. You can just sit in your bedroom and learn how to do it from tutorials. You get cross-pollination. So you get some Irish guy trying to learn throat singing and he'll mix it with trad music. He'll mix it with Shanos or something. And you'll get this insane new genre coming out of it, because that's all genres are. Like that's where the British invasion. It was just them singing blues with English accents.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about it. And now, as much as we kind of want to give out about like maybe Irish hip hop sounds wrong, or Scandinavian rap sounds wrong or something like that, it's just more cross pollination. But once again, if it's just a marketing ploy, that's where it gets a bit morally wrong, I think.
Exactly. That's exactly what that study kind of touches on, the Australian study,
Again, if it's your intent to make money off of it and not do anything for the culture, then you're in it for the wrong reason.
As I'm saying, if it wasn't for rap being really exploited and just for the money, it would have never reached Ireland, really. If they just went, no, we need to keep this pure all the time and not let the big money get carried away with it, we would have never gotten MTV over in Ireland, and no Irish person would have ever been inspired to start this new thing. So from all shitty, big money-making things does come good things. We would have never heard of Nirvana. If Nirvana had kept it real and stayed with Sub Pop, none of us would have heard of them.
Yeah.
There wouldn't have been this big cultural thing that possibly shaped the type of people that we are now, giving out about things. But legitimacy. It's like eating healthy, isn't it? It's like look at the ingredients on the back and make sure it's good for you.
Yeah. Think about it.
Yeah. Think about what you're about to consume.
Great record.
Excellent album. We learned a lot from
Great
it.
record.
And we're back. This week's classic album is The White Stripes' White Blood Cells. So it actually turns 20 this year. It was released in July 2001. And we just touched on The White Stripes there in our kind of intro there with Legitimacy, you know, and the whole kind of persona that they had and the mystique around them. Now, you know, I think I should kind of start off saying, like, their music, I think, is fantastic. It is genuine, you know, and I do think as well with this album in particular, I think Jack White, you know, obviously, you know yourself there, Frank, like the first two albums, you know, they were deeply rooted in blues, you know, kind of like blues revival thing, you know, and Jack White actually said that one of the reasons apparently for the whole color coordinated thing and the whole kind of mystique of it was that he felt nearly that it was a distraction from the fact that these were two white, you know, lower to middle class people, you know, singing and playing black music, you know. So like that was one of his kind of reasons for it. But I think with White Blood Cells, he was aware of kind of, right, I need to move away a little bit from the blues thing, which I think he did achieve, you know, quite a very unique album. But it's interesting that, because you touched on it there earlier on, that especially the first two albums were very much rooted in the analog tape, you know, in a bedroom or a basement, you know, very, very pared back. But of course, with White Blood Cells, it was the first time they were in a 24-track studio, you know, in the famous Eastleigh McCain recording studio. So where you had, you know, your absolute favorites, Frank, Sonic Youth and Pavement, then back to Townes Van Zandt and that, you know, so I had a fantastic reputation. And for them to record there was amazing. But Jack White himself, he basically rushed the entire thing in 4 days. That, like, he wanted it to be rushed. He wanted it to have a sense of it being tense, and he wanted it to be unpolished, despite it being in a big studio. You know, like he said to the engineer at the time, Stuart Sykes, that don't make it sound too good. You know, just because we're in this fancy 24-track studio, we still have a bit of a rep here to follow. You know, but yeah, so he kind of wanted to rush through those 16 tracks and have a feeling of this tense, kind of slightly angry mood. You know. But still getting the raw kind of unbridled talent of the band, you know what I mean? Because I think Meg herself at the time, she wanted to give it more time, that the songs were too new, you know, that she felt that they needed way more time to practice and to kind of go into the studio gradually. But no, Jack was adamant, and I think it paid off, you know, that decision. But one of the interesting things about the artwork, especially the inner sleeve when you open it up, is I touched on the previous section of Legitimacy that, you know, the White Stripes, obviously they had this whole persona, you know, where you had the color coordinated thing, you had the brother and sister thing, and they could only ever be interviewed as a pair, you know, that type of thing, and they'd perpetuate the whole thing. Obviously it started off as a kind of gimmicky thing, then was packaged up with their whole kind of persona and record label, and the artwork depicts them kind of, you know, nearly being set upon by, you know, music journalists and you know, guys with video cameras, you know, in their faces, like, and the whole concept of white blood cells, the title being a white blood cell, kind of being engulfed by bacteria, you know, and they see the bacteria as the media and stuff in the industry. But what I just find, you know, because I think Jack White himself, when I was reading a few interviews, he was like, you know, is all this attention good? You know, like, what's it going to, you know, amount to and all that? But you kind of do have to think, well, you know, you guys are perpetuating the whole persona as well, you know, so it is going to bring some heat on you. You're doing it to yourself as well, you know. Yeah, look, I think there definitely was a genuine thing there with the two of them now when they got signed to V2 then, which was actually, it was quite the interesting thing with this, wasn't it, that it got a second release, basically, a re-release a year later under V2 Records, which just propelled them. In particular, it gives us our favorite, one of our favorite music videos when we were kids, Fell in Love with a Girl, the Lego. that was V2 now. That was V2's connections that got them that.
I bought White Blood Cells in November 2002, and the reason I bought it was because the Vines were on CD UK,
Oh wow, I remember that.
and I was obviously mad into the Vines. And then either I think straight after it, maybe, or maybe it was the episode with or the same time Audio Slave were on it, because Audio Slave had just released the first album as well. Yeah, this band, the White Stripes, came on, and like Audio Slave and the Vines were pretty glossy, well promoted bands. The White Stripes came on, and I remember just thinking, Jesus Christ, this is really dirty sounding, and the drummer can't play drums. Like, that was like, because you're used to, at that age especially, you're just into like, you're getting into music, so you're watching the best drummers on earth.
Yeah.
You're watching Kirk Hammett can play the fastest solos, and this guy, the guy from Pantera can play drums really fast. And then I remember seeing her, and I remember just kind of being like, ah, fuck, none of that means anything, does it? Because they came on and played Fell in Love with a Girl on CD UK, and I was like, that's unbelievable. Fuck all this new metal stuff. Like, fuck Korn, fuck Metallica. This is proper music. And that's the thing. That was the relatability about it. I didn't relate to the brother-sister thing. I didn't relate to the characters. That was escapism, but I related to the music being so easy.
Yeah.
Because I was learning guitar at the time, and I just went, that looks simple. I can play this song. I could write that song. I can do this. Because when I looked at Metallica, I just went, I can't do that. Can't do this. There's no point in even trying to do that. What's the point?
Well, that's it. Like, I think, like, that's it. Like, I think Jack White was consciously aware of that. Despite the whole persona and how they looked and all that, the music was still very relatable. It was genuinely original music, really. Especially when it came to White Blood Cells.
Yeah. And what was great about White Blood Cells, it always blows me away. If you were to just ask me on the spot how many tracks are on White Blood Cells, I go, oh, Jesus, that's like half an hour long. There's probably 10 songs on it. There's 16 tracks on it.
Yeah, I know.
It's barely 40 minutes long. It flies by. But there's just like these instant 3-chord, 2.5-minute songs. It's just pop music, relatable, the essence of pop music. Yeah,
no, absolutely. But that's exactly it. Like 16 tracks. I couldn't believe it. As you said, barely 40 minutes, but that's such a unique sound. That guitar, like, it really is. I remember even at the time when I was 11, 12, and when they started getting big with White Blood Cells, obviously, and I remember hearing the guitar thinking, Jesus, like, is there actually bass there or not? Or does he have some sort of setting on it? But like, you just hear it, the opening track, Dead Leaves, like, Jesus Christ,
I remember that's such a throw off when you're the age we were, like 11, 12, and you're trying to understand music. You're like, okay, the guitar player plays rhythm, and then there's a lead guitar, and then there's the rhythm section. So the bass plays this, and the drums play this, and then you see that like the White Stripes or Yeah, and you go, why don't they have a bass player? That's against the rules. That's against the rules. You're supposed to have a bass player.
Yeah. I specifically remember speaking to one of my mates at the time. We were walking to school at secondary, and we were discussing the White Stripes, about no bass. And this guy was a guitarist, my mate, like, I was just a humble drummer learning drums. I was like, no bass. And the guitarist was like, oh yeah, but my guitar tutor told me, he uses a very certain, like equalizers on his amp and stuff, and kind of gives it that bassy sound, And I was like, what? Wow.
That's a very educated conversation you were having. I remember the conversations. The conversations I was having were just like, yeah, they're not a real band. They actually, in the studio, there is a bass. And this is really funny. I remember listening to The Doors.
Oh yeah,
They fucked up people's heads because it was like, no, they actually have a bass player standing behind a curtain. I remember having that conversation, and then someone else was like, no, he plays it on the piano, and I was like,
he has a special little piano made.
But it sounds like a bass. Apparently they had a bass player, but like Jim Morrison didn't like him, so he had to stand behind a curtain.
Fuck off. Yeah.
Those were such fun times.
Man.
Before the internet, when just lies could run rampant around the place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I remember that mate in particular in school. Like, he was so pleased with that kind of info that he got from his guitar tutor. because he was like, "Oh, I know the secret. I know the secret of how to get away without a bassist." It's
Well,
so fun.
especially because I had a cohort of friends that were like really into the White Stripes before Elephant came out.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it was like, White Blood Cells was the Bible, and then, we found out they had 2 earlier albums and we listened to them. And then Elephant Goes and comes out and everyone's into them. And of course the lead song for this band that doesn't have a bass player is Seven Nation Army.
Yeah.
And everyone's
Yeah.
like, they've sold out, they're after getting a bass player.
Nope.
Oh, it's brilliant. But like the actual, like, just when you look at the tracks themselves and the overall sound, what really actually struck me, because there's definitely a couple of tracks on it, like Expecting and Aluminium, the sounds of them in particular, and I think it is the lack of bass as well. Like I instantly got a real kind of Black Sabbath feel to them,
Yeah.
because like back in the day, when Sabbath played live, whatever way the range was with Tony Iommi on guitar, it completely would mask out Geezer Butler and bass completely. So you'd like, there's actually feck all Black Sabbath recordings, be it bootlegs or official live ones. They actually, I think they only had one official live. But there's just very few recordings where you can actually hear the bass prominently. So it reminded me of that. Really brought back me to that.
But yeah, Aluminium especially. Aluminium was a big song, I remember thinking, because there's no words in it either. It's just this fucking balls to the wall distortion.
That's him though, doing that through like it nearly reminded me of the Hammond organ thing, like not the Hammond, the Leslie speaker. Do you remember? It's kind of sounded a bit like that.
Yeah, no, it definitely is through some sort of Leslie tremolo speaker.
Yeah.
To this day, I'm still trying to replicate the guitar sound on Aluminium.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It's
but that's
so
it. Like
good.
the closest I ever heard to it would have been Sabbath live.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
But one track in particular that really sticks out to me. I'm ashamed to admit I only watched this film during the first lockdown last year in 2020. What is the film? He says, Citizen Kane.
Union Forever.
The Union Forever.
Yeah.
What a track! Is it possibly their most experimental, Frank?
No, have you?
From that era now, like
from that era, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not on about post White Blood Cells.
Oh, absolutely, because there's just such a story to it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, the song, the kind of there is a certain man.
The from Citizen Kane, the production company behind Citizen Kane, I think it was a Warner Studios or something. They contemplated suing Jack White over it, but it never materialized. But yeah, what a track! That's about midway, isn't it?
It's track 6.
And of course, the kind of finishing track, then, this Protector, absolutely brilliant piano finish, and kind of alludes to a whole kind of religious connection, because obviously he was from a very staunch Catholic family, Jack White. So it's interesting that kind of alludes to it. Yeah, just an absolutely brilliant album. And actually, one very interesting fact, and you might know this already, lads, I'm not sure. Have you ever heard of a band called Red Cross?
No.
They're basically this kind of punk rock band formed in the 80s by 2 brothers, the McDonald brothers. But basically, the bassist, Shane McDonald of Red Cross, he absolutely loved White Blood Cells when it came out. And he did this online art project, so an online-only art project, where he played bass to all 16 tracks of White Blood Cells. And he put it up for download online. And I think it clocked at more than 60,000 downloads until the White Stripes intervened and gone to take it down.
Amazing.
So I wonder, is it out there? Can we torrent it or something? But actually, there's such a mad connection with Red Cross as well. The current drummer since 2017 at Red Cross is Dale Grover.
Weird. That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't it? Like, what a connection. But there you go. That's White Blood Cells 20 this year, and of course there will be a deluxe edition out.
Genuinely one of my probably top 10 favorite albums, and it makes me feel very, very old that's 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great record.
Excellent album. We learned a lot from
Great
it.
record.
The Elephant Room recommends.
Say hello again.
I was just about to talk, and then you went to say hello again. All right, folks. Here we are at the end of the show where we wrap up normally and do our recommends. I'm going to kick off things. So, the band, our album that I would recommend you listen to is from a band called The Internet, which they didn't really think that through when people were typing that in, searching them on Google, because I just typed The Internet into Google and got loads of weird links. But they're a really cool band. I've been listening to their album. It's a 2013 album, so it's not a recent release or anything, but it's called Feel Good. They're kind of a blend of R&B, hip hop, jazz, and funk. Listeners of the show would know that anything that kind of blends live instruments and samples for me is always going to be something that I'm interested in. So they're all live musicians, drummer, bassist, guitar player, keyboardist, and then they mix in sampling and synthesizers and different things like that, and it's really on show on this album. So there's not, like, normally I would say a standout track from the album, but there's not a bad song on it. Everything from start to finish is something that I've really enjoyed. So yeah, that's my recommendation for this week.
Lovely. Shall I go now?
Yeah,
Go
go.
on.
Oh, thanks, guys. I will recommend a band that I think we've recommended too many times to count. Man I Trust released a new single,
Oh yeah.
which is just always a momentous occasion. Yeah, they released a new song, Tides. Can't really say much more about it, and we've already banged on about it so much. It's just smooth, original, great instrumentation, great musicianship. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really. It's not like an extraordinary song for them, but it's just Men I Trust being Men I Trust, and it's really good, and you should trust them. My other recommendations are our good friend J.W. Francis released an audiobook, which I thought was quite an original, quirky thing to do, called We Share a Similar Joy, the same as his album. Yeah, it's just him talking, kind of short excerpts of like just different things just about his life. And there's like really crazy kind of old-fashioned type of atmospheric ambient music in the background. It's really well done. It's not the sort of thing you'd listen to over and over and over again, but I just thought it was a really, really good idea that I haven't really seen anyone else do. Recommend check that out if you're into JW. My last one is the most basic bitch thing ever. It's
The Weekend.
Yeah, I recommend the top 5. Not far from it. Have you ever heard of Benny? Benee?
No.
So she is a hip hop to an extent, but she has a song called Super Lonely, and it's in the charts, and it's gotten hundreds of millions of streams, and it's just a really well written pop song. The lyrics aren't really very pop song-esque. They're quite explicit. Obviously there's radio edits and stuff like that are in the charts. Yeah, the instrumentation and like the effects on the vocals and just her tone of voice and stuff. It's a really, really good pop song. I have to say, it's kind of hit me the same way that Pumped Up Kicks did when that came out. Just kind of like, Jesus, that's actually a really, really good pop song. I'd recommend giving that a listen. And that's all I got for this week. How
Cool.
often are we doing this anymore? I don't even know.
Well, I'm going to take you back a good few decades, and I'm going to go all instrumental on y'all. I'm going to recommend the stylings of the American fingerstyle guitarist John Fahey. John Fahey developed the American primitive guitar genre. Now, I'm not sure if he actually called that himself or if it was coined later on, but it's essentially a kind of blend of country blues finger picking techniques on solo guitar, combined with like a kind of non-traditional harmonic and melodic material. So nearly there's flavors of kind of classical in there, and I think there's some Indian influence as well. But basically, he was one of the very early adopters and pioneers of the dadgad tuning. Of course, Jimmy Page now, especially in Led Zeppelin 3 sessions that we would have actually spoke about in one of the episodes last year, that it heavily, heavily features the American primitive guitar genre that Fahey created, about a decade beforehand. Interesting about Fahey is that he never really wanted to have a set of rules for this kind of genre that he created. He always saw it as an evolving thing, and it kind of goes back to what you said, Frank, about that he didn't want to have it as a fixed thing and there'd be no sort of issues over legitimacy or whatever. But there are definitely a couple of tracks from those Led Zeppelin 3 sessions where it's like, wait a minute, this is straight off one of John Fahey's albums. But in terms of what I recommend from John Fahey, I mean, a lot of his back catalogs, it's just brilliant. But one album in particular, it's called Death Chants, Breakdowns and Military Waltzes. What a title. But that's his 1963 album. So it's his first kind of properly recorded album. He had a couple before that he kind of just produced himself, at home, very low grade stuff in the 50s. But this 63 album is the one that he's kind of known for in terms of bringing this American primitive guitar genre to the world. But absolutely, John Fahey, amazing.
Lovely stuff, lads. So I guess we'll wrap it up there. And thanks for listening.
That was very abrupt, Shane.
All right.
Tune in next time.
Yeah, next week.
Well.